This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon, and boy, am I excited this week to break it all down. We are on the verge of NFL free agency. The Lions have made moves, surprising moves. We're starting to get a sense a little bit more of how Brad Holmes wants to construct his team and his regime. So much information to dissect. A potential Pro Football Hall of Famer is leaving the NFC North. Got to break that down. And maybe a Lions draft target has a shitty pro day. So much to get to over the course of the next 60 minutes or so. I'm so excited to bring in my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. You and I are both fresh off of tuning in, just like 500,000 people did, to Aaron Rodgers of the Packers, sitting down, holding court with his guy, Pat McAfee. And you and I both reveled in the way in which he sat there and started his talk by saying, I don't got a decision. This isn't a decision. This is something that's already been decided, and I'm here to clear things up. And then he proceeds to take another 15 minutes of everybody's lives that are tuning in to dissect what football teams do to older players and to narrate everything that's going on. But to cut right through the chase, because I'm not going to be long-winded here in this case, Aaron Rodgers said it on Wednesday in the afternoon. It's time. Baby, it's time. He's going to eventually, when the deal gets done between the Packers and the Jets, he's going to be taking his talents to the East Coast. And boy, was I excited. It kind of, had the feel of like, okay, everybody knew what was going on, but he said it. He officially dissected his thoughts about it, and good. I think it's great for the Lions. Jordan Love is nowhere near, at this time, the caliber of a quarterback that Aaron Rodgers was, and now you have a situation in which the Lions are poised to be the team to beat in the NFC. Now, some people are all ripping on Aaron Rodgers. I've been a weekly listener of his shit for the better part of 2 years, being that I love podcasts and long-form interviews and the way in which he plays the media and does his thing to get himself over. So for me, I don't get bothered by some guy that wants attention, because obviously there's people that want to give it to him. But this situation for me is great because I always tie it to the Lions. Finally, Aaron Rodgers is gone from the NFC. Cuz what's your reaction to what you heard on Wednesday? I know you had a chance to listen to Aaron Rodgers sit there and bloviate and go long-winded about his life situation.
Dude, he is the most self-centered, egotistical asshole I think I've ever seen. Look, I watch Pat's show just like you watch Pat's show. I enjoy Pat's show. I find Pat to be very funny. I find his producers and I find all the guys that he has on there, I find them to be funny. I think they'll have great takes. I think they let you know a little bit about how football actually goes, because everybody thinks they know about football. He kind of gives you a little bit of a lifting of the curtain, if you will. And Aaron Rodgers, every Tuesday is when he is on. It is Tuesdays with Aaron. It is what it is. You watch it, and every time I end up leaving the episode that Aaron Rodgers is on, I'm always like, God, this guy is he is too much. He is all about himself nonstop. Now you fast forward that to free agency, and it is a lot of the same shit. It is Aaron Rodgers talking about Aaron Rodgers. He basically wants to dictate everything. You look at how he has basically manipulated and mind-fucked the Jets. You look at what he's trying to do to Green Bay, trying to hold Green Bay over a barrel, and basically saying, look, the only reason this deal isn't done is because they're holding everything up, because it's all about the compensation they want for me. And it's like, well, yeah, you basically forced them to sign you to a massive contract last year. They're going to get smacked with a massive cap hit because they're going to trade you. So they got to pay you all that money that was basically promised as far as that cap goes to trade you to the Jets. So, yeah. They want their dividends on their return here. If you would have been smarter you wouldn't have been such a baby, and you would have just stopped and thought for a moment. You could have demanded a trade last year, not signed that contract, and things probably would have went a little bit smoother. Because if you ask me, I feel like Green Bay has been ready to move on for Aaron Rodgers for probably the last 3, maybe 4 years. And then he goes on, has the back-to-back MVP years, and it's all basically a giant spite store for Aaron Rodgers. And it gets you to today, where he basically monopolized Pat's show, took over Pat's show to open it up by saying, I'm not going to tell you nothing, and then basically said what we all thought was going to happen anyways. And it all centers around him. In Aaron Rodgers' world, Aaron Rodgers is essentially the sun in all 9 planets, 8 if you don't count Pluto. I don't know where you're at. I still count Pluto. I know science doesn't, but whatever. If you count all the planets, they all revolve around Aaron Rodgers. It's unreal, this guy. That being said, as a Detroit Lions fan, I'm ecstatic. If you're a Lions fan, you've got to be pumped. Do you realize right now, as it sits, you have the best quarterback in the NFC North? You have arguably one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFC overall. As a franchise, you have more stability than the team that has basically reigned supreme over this division for the last 10, 15, maybe 20 years. You have more stability in your organization than Green Bay. When was the last time you could say that? It's been forever. And it really does feel like the division has flipped upside down, and it really does feel like it is Detroit's for the taking. You lose a guy like Aaron Rodgers in your division. You have what appears to be a bit of a decline with Minnesota as they are just releasing guys left and right. Now, Chicago, obviously a bit of a concern. They're trying to retool their offensive line. They've got their quarterback. At least it seems as though they've got their quarterback. They're trying to retool their defense, but they're in that retooling stage where I really feel like the Detroit Lions kind of stuck to the plan, held steadfast, and just kind of loaded up, added some more talent, and has themselves ready essentially for the season. What's going to happen with the draft when the draft rolls around? It's just going to be extra whipped cream and extra toppings on the sundae for the Detroit Lions. I really feel like the Detroit Lions have done a masterful job handling aspects of their free agency this year. And I think Aaron Rodgers finally announcing that he is leaving, it has essentially passed the baton to the Detroit Lions. It is their division for the taking. NFC North champs coming up in 2024.
When you look at it, do the Bears and their moves give you any pause for concern? Obviously, they've gained additional capital. They picked up their receiver for Justin Fields and DJ Moore. They picked up the linebackers that many people in Detroit were interested in, 2 of them, in fact, and gave massive money. Ryan Poles, the GM, was like, I'm flush with cash, and I'm ready to spend it. And you get Tremaine Edmonds. You get a talented young linebacker, give him one of the largest contracts for his position in the NFL history. You realize, okay, the Bears realized their defense struggled mightily. You wanted to get a player to take over for Roquan Smith, who you moved on from. Now you add a couple pieces. The trenches still blow. They still need work, but you can allocate some resources now in the draft. Now, many people say, look, not yet. The Bears are still in a rebuild, but they did it correctly in regards to, look, you trade when you have the number 1 pick, you get more assets, you get a player, and you now set yourself up to add pieces. And they could even pinch a player from the Lions if they wanted to, a wide receiver or a running back. And we'll talk about it. But they did lose a key member of their offense to the Lions, which we will talk about. But are you concerned at all right now about the Bears? Because it's still the Vikings division until otherwise, but they obviously now are starting to make some moves as well. But I do agree with you. The Lions are poised to have a lot of success moving forward, but I think the next team in line that potentially could do some things to challenge the Lions is the Bears.
I think if you're a Detroit fan, you do have to be worried about the Bears, right? I mean, you've seen what they did when they traded their first round draft or their first overall draft pick. They ended up moving back to Carolina's spot at 9. They ended up picking up a bunch of draft capital. They were basically flushed with cash for free agency. They had the most money to spend in free agency, and they went out there and they are addressing problems on their team. And it really does feel like they are trying to do this the smartest way possible. It doesn't really feel like they are necessarily overspending. Doesn't really necessarily feel like they are going out on a limb to try to get guys. If guys want to come there and want to play there, they've got money for them, but the contract has to be right. They're not overpaying for anybody, which is what really gets you in trouble. So I really do feel like if you're a Lions fan, yeah, you got to keep an eye on the Bears. You got to watch what's going on. The Bears, adding DJ Moore just upgraded their wide receiving core. That instantly makes their quarterback that much better. They're looking to address the offensive line because the offensive line has been nothing but issues. So they're looking at retooling that. You brought up the linebackers. They had 2 new linebackers. That's going to make that defense instantly better. So I think you're starting to see Chicago take those steps forward. I think Chicago is really where Detroit was maybe 18 months ago, maybe 24 months ago. I think Chicago is in that spot where they're just a couple steps behind Detroit. So if you're Detroit, it really does feel as though the time is now. It really feels as though the division is yours for the taking. You just can't screw it up. Yeah, Minnesota still has guys, and they still have a couple of dudes over there. But it really feels as though they've kind of opened their windows and opened their doors, and we're like, you got to go, you got to go, you got to go. Everybody's got to go. And they're just cutting guys left and right. Whereas Chicago, on the other hand, is like, hey, we've got cash. Let's go spend it. Let's go shopping, and let's see what we can get. And Chicago is coming back with some of the newest threads. I think a lot has to be said for that locker room. I think they've got to build that culture. I think that's the one thing that you could take out of these press conferences that the Detroit Lions have had. You go and you listen to John Kaminsky's press conference, talks about it being a family atmosphere. You then juxtapose that with Kerryon Johnson's tweet where he worked for a drill sergeant. I mean, it's 2 different Lions organizations that we're talking about here. So I think the Detroit Lions are in a prime spot. That being said, you still have to be concerned about the Chicago Bears because they are loading up for bear. They are loading up right now. I mean, they've got a lot of draft capital. They're not done spending money in free agency. So that team's going to look different. That team's going to be better than it was last year. And when it's all said and done, I really do feel like it's going to be the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears dueling it out for probably the next 5, maybe 6 seasons if things continue on the track that they're supposed to continue on. So yeah, definitely nervous about the Chicago Bears. But all that being said, Chicago Bears lost a very valuable piece, arguably their best offensive piece in their running back. Detroit swoops in, signs him, and now you've got David Montgomery as your running back. I believe that would signal the end of the Jamal Williams era here. But you know what? I'm okay with it. When I seen that, I was excited. This is a guy who is a 3-down back. This is a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield. Jamal Williams really didn't do that. This is a guy who could run between the tackles, make guys miss, which is a big deal. Jamal Williams really ran for contact, ran into you, fell forward, picked up 3-4 yards. That was his primary role. That's why he had 17 touchdowns. Jamal Williams was a culture guy. He was a instrumental piece in establishing that new culture, that John Kaminsky was talking about. But you now just upgraded your running back. And I think by upgrading your running back, it signals a lot of stuff. I don't think you're taking Bijan Robinson like you want at 18. I don't think that DeAndre Swift is going to be long for his position here in Detroit. I think this kind of signals the swan song for DeAndre Swift. I think with the signing of Dave Montgomery, you're obviously Jamal Williams isn't coming back. I think what you just told that running backs room is you got to be better. You've got to be able to perform. You got to be able to do multifaceted things. You can't just run. You got to be able to catch the ball too. I think this was a fantastic signing. On top of it, I think it hurts the Chicago Bears. I think they were kind of moving away from Montgomery. But that being said, I think it hurts the Bears because that was their best offensive player, not named Justin Fields. So I think it was a huge coup for the Detroit Lions, and I'm ecstatic about the signing. What was your initial reaction to the news breaking about David Montgomery signing with the Detroit Lions?
Yeah, overall, I look at it, and now you're starting to see that Brad Holmes is being honest. They're not going to make super splashy contracts with free agents. They're just not going to probably, at this point, in their rebuild go outside of building through the draft. So they're not going to go out there and give Ezekiel Elliott $50 million. They're not going to go out there and get the top-end guys at every position and splash them with the contracts that the Bears did. What they said was, we're going to find fits, find opportunities where we can find players that can do better. And Ben Johnson, look, the Lions are honest. He recently came out and said that in looking at a lot of our plays, we ran the ball and got 4 yards. If we just shed one tackle, we get 9 yards. So they went out and basically got a younger Jamal Williams. And it signals that the Lions, and going back to your point about the family,
a better Jamal Williams.
And what it speaks to is Brad Holmes is not enamored with the players on the roster. Now, there has to be, obviously, a respect level. There has to be opportunities. And what more can the Lions do for Jamal Williams than to feature him, get him 17 touchdowns, and maybe a contract for $7-8 million? But that's not what's in the cards for the Lions to do. They had a number based on their cap figure and where they're at, and they paid $6 million. I think Jamal Williams might garner 7 to 8. And good for him. He might go to a winning team, might end up with the Jets, might end up with the Buffalo Bills. But you look at the Lions and you realize, okay, it's not splashy. What I love is it will finally end the debate that now can be had, and we'll talk about the free agents in a second, because the quote-unquote building the right way is what the Lions are saying. That's what they're selling everybody. We're going to build through the draft. We're going to pick and choose. We're going to find guys that potentially love the game of football, are diehard, will go to the mat for their teammates, will go to the mat and be young and cheap, and this is what we'll do. Now, of course, when the time comes, they will add probably 1 to 2 players that they believe when the time is right, when they make the playoff push. Now we'll see if this is being built the right way, because there's an argument to be made. I mean, the Rams did the complete opposite. They had the foundation, but they went out and traded for a quarterback, traded for a linebacker, traded for a wide receiver. They aggressively pursued their championship and, boom, found their window and fucked up their draft capital for the next few years. But nobody cares because they ended up with a world championship. The Lions are doing it slow and steady, and for me, I'm nefarious. You know that. I think, man, if you're a general manager, this is a great blueprint to get 4 years guaranteed on your money. You're like, you know what? Let's build the right way. Let's build through the draft. It ensures that I can tell the owner we're doing it, quote unquote, the right way. Well, I can make an argument, cause that with the team that you got a very young team. If you pursued Bobby Wagner, you pursued talented wide receivers, a running back, if you kind of did some things and shed some of your draft capital and added, you could maybe get to the Super Bowl in 2023. But it's a gamble, and some general managers don't want to do that. The Lions are in the right way category. I'm appreciative that they've been honest, forthright. They've said that's what we're going to do, and this is what they've done. But we can make arguments. We can sit here and argue. They could have went and got Jalen Ramsey. They could have gotten a different running back. They could have gotten Derrick Henry. They could have gotten older veterans that have potential to do more, high-end talent. So we'll see. We'll see what this process ends up being, because for me, I would have taken maybe a little. And look, at the time of this recording, free agency has not officially started. We're 20 minutes away from the official talk, but in being honest, the landscape of the free agents this year is kind of weak. It's a B- class at best. So the Lions are picking and choosing what they're doing. But I'll look at it like this. You don't think TJ Edwards that the Bears got is better than Alex Anzalone? You don't think that John Kaminsky or Isaiah Buggs, maybe you pick one of them and then you go out and you get a Jason Hargrave, or you get somebody else, Sheldon Rankins, to come in here, or you pursue and max out for a Deron Payne, or you try to do something to make it happen to expedite this? So we'll see. You can make the argument all the time, and that's what makes sports fun. So I look at it, and I'm hoping that I'm rooting for Brad Holmes to get it done. But so far, the only move really that you can say in question is Alex Anzalone. You could have maybe you could have passed. At $6 million annual average salary is a little high based on his talent. I like the additions of obviously Cam Sutton And Mosley, I think, is great. Obviously, you start to see, and of course on Twitter at Detroit Podcast, I was joking around, guys. I'm aware the Lions like to draft and select injured players. And it's just kind of funny that it's kind of happening in droves now where you're looking at it and the MO in free agency is finding an affordable player coming off of an injury that you believe fits. That's funny because now it's clear and evident. That's what you're doing. You're trying to kind of keep the cap in order on the cheap. And I'm like, look, man, get creative with this cap. You see some teams like the 49ers, they keep adding talent. They added Christian McCaffrey. They're doing stuff in free agency. They're signing a quarterback. So I look at it like there's always room for debate with the Lions, but it's workmanlike. It's professional. They've upgraded the talent level on the roster, and they still have nearly 7 to 8 draft picks that can make this football team better. There's a lot of good things to look at, and not every pick and selection that the Lions are going to make we're going to be happy with, but they're finding culture guys. They're rewarding them. I will say this, though. Does it in any way signal to you, like, look, how is it good that Jamal Williams balls out, he takes an opportunity, leaving the Packers, who decided to move on from him after 4 years. He takes a 2-year contract. He does everything that you want. He blocks. He's a leader. He steps up. He becomes the basically the emotional face of your team. He has 17 touchdowns for you, and you can't find $8 million for him, like one charity signing. You can't find maybe a 1-year deal for $10 million and say, look, stick with it, or give him a shorter term deal. It goes to show you, yes, NFL tries to create the perception of a family, but the second a general manager or a coaching department sees any opportunity to get better, they boot your ass, no matter what you did. And it's ruthless. It's tough when you shine the light on it, because it's not sexy to talk about. It's not nice. And I could you imagine you're Jamal Williams? You poured your heart and your soul into the organization. You were featured on Hard Knocks. You do everything you can, and the Lions reward you by saying bye, signing somebody younger than you. Ouch, that's a little bit tough.
I think it's great. No, I think it's great. I think this is where you want your organization to be. This is what we have crucified this organization for. Falling in love with their guys, sticking with what they have, not being willing to go out there and take a risk or make a change, right? You finally have a guy who loves being here, and you're like, you know what? We can do better than you. When have you been able to say that the Lions have been able to say that? To basically look at a free agent who wants to be here, right? Basically, Jamal Williams said all the right things. I want to be in Detroit. I'd love to stay here. We just got to make the money work. And essentially, it's a difference of $1 million a year. That's what it comes down to. Whether it's a 2-year deal, 3-year deal, or whether it's a 5-year deal. It's $1 million is probably what it came down to, because Montgomery gets 6, Jamal Williams will probably get 7, maybe 8. So $1 or $2 million. You mean to tell me they don't have $1 or $2 million in the coffers? Yeah, they do. Absolutely, they do. But you know what? They evaluated what Jamal Williams did. They evaluate what Jamal Williams does. They sat there and they projected it out, and they're like, you know what? No, you're not going to be worth that much money. We're not going to do that. We're not going to take a chance on this. We're actually going to go out. We're going to get somebody who's better than you at all facets of being a running back, going to bring him in, and we're going to pay him less. This is what you want from your organization. The not signing Jamal Williams, I think, is one of the most underrated moves of this free agency so far. The not bringing Jamal Williams back because it was the easy thing to do. It's hard when you have guys who want to be there, guys who the fan base falls in love with. It's hard when guys are basically out there open, like, I want to come back, but it just has to make sense. It's hard to basically turn your back on them, especially when it's $1 million, maybe $2 million. That's going to be the ultimate difference, and say, no, we're going out, we're signing somebody cheaper and who's better than you, and we're bringing them in. This is a sign of change for the Detroit Lions.
Good change.
If you're a Lions fan, you need to get comfortable with this, because this is how the big boys do business. You haven't been able to say that the Lions have ever been able to do business like this, and this is big boy business.
Big boy business with the opportunity to get players that are better. But I will say this, David Montgomery has a little bit of an injury history, gets nicked up, doesn't miss a lot of games, but ends up kind of in that Swift category where he's a little bit nicked up, maybe not the most explosive runner, but there's still an opportunity. Don't discount the Bijan Robinson or another back that they fall in love with later on in the draft. I do think they still will target a running back, maybe not high end, but maybe later on in the draft, somebody that potentially could do some things that fits the culture. So I'm curious, what do you make of the defensive backs that they added? 2 upgrades in my mind, affordable, nothing too crazy. Cam Sutton ends up being one of the bigger free agent contracts that you have seen, but obviously he's one of the best corners out there in terms of, at least it's an immediate upgrade from what you have. It's obviously universally praised. Everybody saw the game in which he kind of locked it down a little bit on Jamar Chase. He's not really the best with his hands in terms of getting interceptions, but man, can he lock it down and be around the football in coverage. And it's a player that teams targeted and still had a lot of success. Mosley's going to be the question mark coming off of an injury, but he was making a case that he was having a career year. It's great. And then I still think you look at the draft maybe later on in regards to – that's why I keep saying on Twitter that I believe it's great because it sets up at 6. You go Tyree Wilson or you go Jalen Carter maybe based on what the hell's going on with him. Maybe you find an interior defensive lineman early, and then that opens the door to be aggressive. Maybe you pick up somebody, you make a trade, maybe you get the quarterback. That second pick gives you flexibility. It could even be Bijan Robinson. It doesn't preclude you from taking the home run threat. Now you got Bijan Robinson, David Montgomery, and Craig Reynolds, and Swift. Maybe you pull out a trade, or you have Swift too, and you maneuver something with Craig Reynolds and move him along. That is unbelievably a great opportunity for the Lions with the flexibility. But what'd you make of the secondary? I think it's an upgrade, and it gives Aaron Glenn at least a few more resources in his efforts to improve the defense.
I think if you look at the overall construction of this defense, it's going to be dramatically better than last year. I think bringing in Cam Sutton was a fantastic move. That was the guy that you and I targeted early on in free agency. That was the guy that we were both like, we need to go get this guy. That was the cornerback that we wanted. They've got him. The Mosley signing was basically a cherry on top. I think that's fantastic. Like, you realize now your cornerbacks, your basically your defensive back room is so much better. It just basically went from, on a scale of 1 to 10, it basically went from being at a 3.5 to now I would say it's at least a 7. I'm just astonished at what they did by going out and grabbing these defensive backs and bringing them in, because I think both these guys can play. And look, you talked about going out and basically giving out 1-year try-hard deals and basically signing guys who have been nicked up and injured. I think it's fantastic. It's a great way to keep your cap basically keep your cap contained, but it also allows you the flexibility for the following year. It allows the player to come here, fall in love with the culture, want to do good, and then perform, and then you can reevaluate and say, look, okay, cool. You're obviously not worth $6 million. You're obviously worth $12 million. We're going to give you $12 million a year, and you can keep them here. I think it's a fantastic way for them to do business, especially on guys that maybe they're not 100% sold on. I love what they've done in recalibrating that secondary. I think it's absolutely fantastic. The one issue, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, it's what they've done at linebacker, or maybe what they haven't done at linebacker. Alex Anzalone was like the one guy that I did not want them to go out and re-sign and bring back. And look, he had his best year last year. If I was to pull up the stats and read the stats to you and I said, hey, would you want a guy who had this many tackles, this many sacks, this many fumbles, this many interceptions, you would be like, yeah, sign me up. And I'd be like, well, that's Alex Anzalone. And you're giving him, what, $6 million a year? So you got him on the cheap? You'd be like, yeah, sign that up. But then you find out it's Alex Anzalone and you're like, wait, hold on. I don't necessarily want that. I wasn't impressed with the Alex Anzalone signing. It really upset me. Again, I was a guy who wanted Levante David. I wanted Bobby Wagner. I wanted, I don't know, there's like a couple other guys out there that I wanted them to bring in and stuff in the middle of that defense. Alex Anzalone wasn't one of those guys. This coaching staff loves him, obviously. And like I said, they put him in positions where they feel they are getting the most out of him, and they feel like they can get more out of him. So at this moment in time, I'm going to trust the coaching staff can squeeze more out of Alex Anzalone than what we've been getting. And maybe what he was doing the second half of the year is what he should be doing all the time. I'm going to take a wait-and-see approach there. I think they definitely go into the draft, and I think they definitely upgrade the linebacking core, and I think they definitely upgrade the middle of that defense. I think the signing of Bugs was nice.
Yes.
And bringing back Kaminsky was nice. I think those are nice moves. I think those guys are key to this defense. But I think they're key because they're depth guys. They're guys that you can plug in. They know the system. They know how to play. And you know what you're going to get out of them. I don't necessarily know if those are the most impactful free agents that you could bring in or the most impactful players that you can put on the field any given Sunday. So I do anticipate this organization upgrading both the linebackers and the defensive tackle position through the draft or maybe a little bit later on in free agency. The Alex Anzalone thing is the one thing that really kind of irked me with all of this. Like overall, I think Brad Holmes has done a masterful job with this free agency. The Alex Anzalone thing is the one little shit stain in your underwear after you had a really bad poop and you thought you did a really great job wiping. It's the one little like, oh man, I missed a spot. That is Alex Anzalone. And we'll see if we can get it out in the wash and maybe it's great and maybe it's not. But time's going to tell, and I'm willing to trust this coaching staff, and I'm willing to believe in Brad Holmes, knowing what he's doing and knowing what he's trying to go out and get as far as guys. Do you think they add maybe one more piece to that linebacking core, or is Alex Anzalone kind of it for free agency? We're just going to have to wait for the draft.
Wait for the draft. I see potentially Trenton Simpson, other linebackers that you can find in the draft that have talent. You can find and supplement what you got because you still got Malcolm Rodriguez. You got to get more out of Derek Barnes. Maybe one more. I don't think that you go in free agency for linebackers because the market is pretty much set and you missed out on the top guys. I think you can build and get experience and a nice talented player in the draft. So we'll see. I am curious. We have to add another position now to the list of friends don't let friends play running back anymore. I mean, look, Ezekiel Elliott just got cut. Derrick Henry, all the shit that he's done for the Titans. Jamal Williams. People are talking about DeAndre Swift getting gone and moving on from him. David Montgomery, all the productivity he had and all the productivity he had behind a shitty line, they move on from him. Shit, it's official. Friends don't let friends play cornerback because it's an offensive league, and friends don't let friends play running back because the NFL spits you up and chews you out, and they want to get a young, cheap dude. Could you imagine you're a running back and you're going into the line and you're just getting destroyed play after play after play, and the league is like, okay, time's ticking, one less play that we can run with you. You're out of here at 25. It's like, Jesus, all the hard work and all the shit you got to do to put up with, and they broom you out quick, and they don't want to pay you. They don't want to pay, and people are complaining online, don't pay running backs, and the Lions only paid $6 million. It's not all that much money. $6 million. And they're like, no, don't pay it. Good Lord. That's why you do Bijan Robinson, because he's got talent, and you can get him cheap. And here's the advantage, cuz always remember, first-round picks lets you have the extra fifth-year option for team control. So that way you get an extra maybe year with Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you get that extra opportunity only in the first round. That's why teams are taking a lot of receivers early, and maybe the Lions, who took a swing on a wide receiver last year, maybe they'll take a swing. Don't discount it. I think that you're right. They could find cheaper later on, but very rarely do you get size, speed, talent, everything that you would want in a player that you can also have for the extra fifth year. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think Brad Holmes, the very least, we can sit here and chat it up and talk about a general manager that seems to have a plan in place that's believable and reasonable. You can debate, obviously, every move a team makes, but it's nothing egregious where you say, oh my God, this is horrendous. He's fucking up the cap. He's doing this and that. He's doing great things, obviously renegotiating deals for Tracy Walker, Charles Harris, doing some things to add cap space to do what you can to manage everything. So it's in order. And he's forthright and honest. He says, I'm going to do this. Keep your expectations lower. We're looking for fits as opposed to splashes. And that's what he does. You don't feel disappointed. You can just honestly have the debate. Should he go out there and make splashes? I'm a reasonable risk taker. And maybe you could have did it for Jalen Ramsey, or maybe you could have did it for Tremaine Edmonds, or one of the higher end talented players out there. So we'll see. We'll see.
Like, look at it this way. Look at it this way, right? So he restructures Tracy Walker's deal. Or no, it was Tracy Walker's deal, right?
Correct.
That he restructured?
Yep.
So he restructures Tracy Walker's deal and basically frees up almost $6 million to go out and basically bring in another cornerback to help that defense. Like, he is playing chess. Like, if you think this man is a boob and you think this man is dumb,
he's not a boob.
You are completely flawed in your way of thinking. This guy is like 3 steps above everybody else right now with the way he is going about, 1, handling the cap, 2, handling the roster, and 3, getting deals done. You move some money around with a guy who is here and still wants to be here in Tracy Walker, a guy who's going to help boost your secondary, because he missed a large part of the season last year with an injury. He's going to come back. And look, 2 years ago, arguably, he was your best safety that you had. So he's going to come back and he's going to slot in and he's going to perform for you. And now you're going to take that extra money that you got by redoing his contract and you're going to basically slip it in an envelope and slide that envelope across the table to a guy who you're like, come in, give us 1 year. Let's see what you can do for a year. We're going to give you $6 million to show us. And you know what? After that, maybe that turns into 12. Maybe we keep you. Maybe we wash our hands and we say, hey, we're good, and we move on. But either way, Brad Holmes now has flexibility. He has money. Do you remember when this cap used to be in just dire straits? Like, we're like, oh my God, we can't do anything. You got to release guys. You got to release good guys because the cap is over and it's just a complete mess. Or it was constantly kicking the can down the road. I remember when what was it? It was Tom Lawan was the capologist. It just kind of was, you're just kicking the can down the road. And at a certain point, you just got stuck with this massive cap hit because that was all they did. They never really adjusted the cap. Here with this general manager, when they tell you that your cap is $22 to $25 million, you legit got $25 million to play with. There's nothing on the back end that's going to come and smack you in the face. The way that they have done this and handled not just the cap, but the roster to go along with the cap is absolutely phenomenal. And then you add in, he has done a great job in the drafts. And I'm going to say the word great. He's done a great job in the draft. Yeah, there have been misses. There really has been. His defensive tackles that he has drafted, it's real sketch. It's like he's batting maybe 25% on those picks. Not really good. But you're talking about finding a guy in the fifth or sixth round who plays edge for you. You're talking about hitting on your first round draft picks. That used to be a problem here, guys. I don't know if you remember. Finding guys in your third round that are panning out. It's really been that second round has kind of hamstrung you a little bit and put you in a spot where we're talking about possibly drafting Jalen Carter or basically salivating and lusting after Jalen Carter because he's supposed to be the best defensive tackle in this draft. So he's done a really good job with the draft, with the cap, with these contracts, bringing guys in and allowing himself flexibility to not just maneuver in the draft, but to maneuver in free agency and to maneuver as the season kind of wears along. I think he is playing 3D chess and not just checkers, and I think he's doing a fantastic job. I think it's great. And look, I applaud what Brad Holmes has been doing.
Absolutely. It's great. We can have higher level debates about roster building and talent decisions and cap flexibility and which players get extended and which players you get offered to and potentially looking at other players. I mean, when Darius Slay gets cut at 32 years old after a solid season, he did struggle in the Super Bowl. He did get targeted. It was crazy. There were some plays where he had some miscommunication in the Super Bowl, but you're not going to pay a corner that much money at 32 years of age. Despite loyalty, despite productivity, cash and age are things that are facets of a player that are looked at when decisions are made because it's a salary cap league. And that's why this is the best time of year because we can look at different decisions and different things like that and see where the team's going. And we haven't even talked about the official start of free agency. We've just been talking about the legal tampering period where you can start to negotiate. Now, in about 60 seconds from you hearing my voice right now, teams can go out and say, I want you, come here. And it's going to be great. Free agency frenzy is going to start in about 90 seconds, and it's going to be wild. And there's even more that we're going to break down on next week's episode. So it's going to be great to follow along with what the Lions are doing. But as of the last 72 hours, the Lions did get better. They did clearly establish what they're doing, and it's all good, man. And for us that try to text people, and hearing Adam Schefter get shot down by Aaron Rodgers just made my day, made my year, where Aaron Rodgers is like, yeah, I texted, I got a text from Adam Schefter, and I sent a message back, and I said, scram, lose my number. I'm like, oh, that feels good. I'm still in the category where I get ignored, where I get the door slightly opened, and they're like, yeah, I'll come on your podcast. Then you go and you set up a time. You're like, okay, I'm recording Wednesday at this time, and you hear nothing back, and you're like, okay, great. I haven't gotten to the level where people tell me to scram and buzz off. They open the door, and then they slam it shut with the ghost. So it actually warms your heart to know that Adam Schefter, is not in the inner circle of Aaron Rodgers. Adam Schefter's in everybody's inner circle. He's in everybody's shit. But for Aaron Rodgers, his shit goes to his friends, and his shit goes to Pat McAfee. And that's just the way it goes. There's 1,000 players in the league. You're not going to get every single person to give you information. There are 2 other guys, in Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport, who work for the league. So you're not going to officially get all the scoop. So it made me feel good. But it was funny. He got some pub out of it by actually releasing the text. And it's familiar because I've always released fake text in the DSP text of the day. And to see one that kind of resembles what we posted was great. Because we got to wrap with this, I got to ask you, it's very rare in the course of the decade we've done this podcast that you've seen a pro day that went as shitty as Jalen Carter's. I'm shocked because pro days are basically an official setup that you can make and set up officially to make yourself look good. It's your school. It's your weight room. It's your friends. It's your setup to bring people into your house. For Jalen Carter to show up 9 pounds overweight and to have a reportedly shitty performance where he gasses out, couldn't finish the workout, that's fucked up. And that's something you got to pay attention to closely, because when you're in an environment that's set up for you to succeed, all the outside noise obviously had to be getting to him. I don't think that he intended to set out to not work out as much and gain 9 pounds from the combine until his pro day. Red alert, another one rises with Jalen Carter. Even though I had mocked him in my post-combine mock draft along with B. John, I have to take him off. If I do another mock draft, Jalen Carter is off my list. He's no longer a Dan Campbell guy. Something's wrong. He's got shit going on. He's distracted. And I have never heard of a poor workout at a pro day. It's not sometimes where it's not as good as what people thought. You expected to run a 4.6 and you run a 4.68. Fine, you hear that. But to have the workout that you heard about Jalen Carter, I'm off the boat, cuz he's not a Lion. He's not Lions material.
What did Jamarcus Russell do at his pro day? Wasn't it exceptional? Didn't he look like he was the second coming of the quarterback? So I generally compare huge draft busts to Jamarcus Russell because he was arguably one of the worst. But look, that is concerning. Let's put it that way. I think with that report, you definitely have to take a little bit of pause. I think if you're the Detroit Lions, you really have to delve into what took place today, what's going to take place tomorrow, where's his head at. The one thing that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes want, they want guys who love football. What that means is you eat, breathe, sleep, shit football. Your life revolves around football. You got a kid and you got a wife and you got a home. Cool. You know how that goes? Football, kid, wife, home. That's how it goes. You love Jesus? Great. You know how that goes? Football, Jesus, kid, wife, home. That's how it rolls. Football is always the number one priority. Football is life. That's what they're looking for. Now with Jalen Carter, this might not be the case. It might be other things that are a little bit more in his realm of interest or things that are a little bit more important to him. So if that's the case, they're not going to take him. You don't have to worry about the Lions drafting him at 6. I myself am still I seen what he did at Georgia, and I watched how he played at Georgia. And I seen what Jordan Davis was able to do when he got to the league. Now, look, they're obviously different players, but they come from the same football factory. And there's a lot of really good tape of Jalen Carter out there. So I am in the camp of I'm going to pause and I'm going to kind of see what takes place going forward. I am alarmed, though. But at this moment in time, I'm not ready to scratch his name off my draft board. I think he's a type of player you can plug into the middle of your defense. You can draft him at 6, plug him into the middle of your defense, and you are just going to body bag other offensive linemen all day long. You are going to make their life a living hell. In turn, you're going to body bag running backs. He's the type of interior defensive lineman that's not just a run stuffer. He's also a guy who can provide quarterback pressures and get sacks. A lot of guys, really big, they just plug up the middle. This guy's really big, plugs up the middle, but he also gets to the quarterback. You remember what Ndamukong Suh was. Ndamukong Suh was very similar, right? A big guy who can plug up the middle, demands a double team, but he can also get to the quarterback and provide pressure. Now, Ndamukong Suh was a freak athlete and could play inside, outside, play all over the place, and that's how they utilized him. It was fantastic. But Jalen Carter is primarily inside guy who plugs up the middle and can get to the quarterback and put that pressure on. And could you imagine Jalen Carter, right? Ooh. Putting pressure up the middle, and you've got Aiden Hutchinson or you got Houston coming around the ends and just everybody meeting right there in the middle and just wreaking havoc for quarterbacks, especially in this division. We've already talked about the quarterbacks in this division, right? They're not great. Like, Jared Goff is the best quarterback in this division, and I'm not saying that as a slight to him. It's just what the truth is. He is the best quarterback in this division right now because Aaron Rodgers is on the way out the door. So I'm not ready to scratch his name off of my list. I am concerned, though. When you gas out of your own drills at your pro day, and again, you have a say in kind of what you're going to do at your pro day. It's why it's your pro day. When you gas out, that's a concern. That's a problem.
And it's the deepest defensive line class in a long time. It's deep, and people are talking about a lot of players that can be successful. So you have to give Todd McShay credit. He put it out there, character issues, and that's what's happened. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way it goes. And he's got a lot of Jalen Carter has a lot of rehabilitating to do because, it's just unheard of where it's a workout designed to highlight your skills in your home environment. That's why some people skip the combine and decide to make it where you come to me, and that's what I would do. That's what that's why I should do, because the combine basically is just poking holes in your story, and the pro day is kind of like uplifting you in the safest way possible. So it's crazy, it's wild. But one last thing, I just want to get your quick opinion, 60 seconds or so. Lamar Jackson turned down reportedly 3 years, $133 guaranteed. Average annual salary, $46 million if you do the math. 133 divided by 3. Dude's crazy, man. That's a perfect offer. 3 years, you're not locked in. You get over $40 million a year, and you turn that down? What's this guy doing? Does he really think in this day and age without an agent that these teams, when it's open, your owner came out and said, I hate the offer for Deshaun Watson. Excuse me. He comes out, your owner says, I hate the deal. You think you're going to come and trump it? He's turned down so many good offers that I think he's kind of brushing up against it, where as we're talking, the new league year started. I don't think a lot of teams are going to make the offer just because in the NFL, in the world of the NFL, only one player has ever left a team that's been tendered an exclusive rights, a non-exclusive franchise tag. Just one. These teams don't want to do the bidding for the Ravens. They don't want to set the market. They're like, you do it, because any offer we make, great. We got to wait 5 days for you guys to decide if you want to do it. It holds us up. It's not advantageous for us. Lamar Jackson, I just think, has dropped the ball in every scenario possible, and I think he hurt himself. But if you're the Lions, hell, make the offer. 3 years, 133, get it declined, but at least you try and reach out. 3 years is short term. You have a good couple years, and you easily, at 29 years old, can get 10 years and $500 million. So I just think
it doesn't make any sense.
Use an agent, guy. Use an agent.
His mom being his agent is a complete mess. 3 years at 133 and it's all fully guaranteed. Like, bro, you're basically going to set the market for the annual value of it, right? So like, what are you worried about? It has to be bigger than Deshaun Watson's. That's just stupid. Like that is just dumb. And if you look at what the Browns have done, the Browns have restructured his deal. This is the whole thing with the cap, right? The cap's kind of made up. It's all imaginary money. You just keep restructuring deals, and like I said, similar to what Tom Lawan did when he was here. You just keep kicking the can down the road. That's what the Browns are going to do, and that's what he was looking for Baltimore to do. Baltimore's incredibly smart. That's another organization. That's another big boy organization that does big boy things, that makes smart moves. They're like, look, we're not doing this. And this has been very, very public. And at this point, they're like, look, we're not doing this. We'll just franchise you. They franchise him. They basically pay him $11 million less than what they were offering him. And they're like, cool, we want to do it again. Get that $44 million that you're looking for and settle on some type of deal for yourself. And like you said, it's a short-term deal. And look, I understand football is a really weird sport where you could be playing today and you could be gone tomorrow. I totally understand that. I get it, right? And you want that long-term security. I totally understand that too. But if you sign a short-term deal, 3 years at 133, and the one thing that Lamar Jackson does better than just about anybody else is he avoids that big critical hit. That means you get to come back after that. You could probably come back in year 2 and look for an extension. And then you can get like a 5-year extension where you're going to get more money guaranteed. It's like the way the contracts are put together, it is silly. That is the one thing, like when people get upset about what Montgomery got. Like Montgomery's 3-year contract is legitimately, it's a 2-year deal. And they have an option for a 3rd year. If they want him, they can keep him. If they don't want him, then get rid of him. It's a 2-year deal. He's getting basically pennies to be here. Same thing with Sutton. Sutton's deal is essentially a 2-year deal where they have an option for a 3rd year if they want to keep him. So, like, there's no need to get upset and get worked up about this stuff. Like, take the 3-year deal, fully guaranteed, and then we can move on. And in basically 2 years, we can work out a 5-year deal where it'll probably be half guaranteed, which is still a ridiculous amount of money. Think about this, right? You're going to sign a contract and you're going to set the bar at $44 million a year, right? So that means the next couple contracts that come out are going to be bigger than that. So with the way the salary cap goes, it just keeps increasing. In 2 years, you could be looking at $50 million. You sign a $50 million deal at 5 years, that's $250. Divide that by 2 because half of it's going to be guaranteed. You just made $133 million guaranteed. You could be getting in excess of $125 million more dollars guaranteed. It'll probably be more than that. It'll probably be closer to $150 million guaranteed at that point because you're not going to go backwards. You're only going to go forwards. That's what happens in the NFL. It's always about moving it forward, moving the line. So, like, dude, that is ridiculous money. Like, who needs that amount of money? Nobody. Like, you're just shooting yourself in the foot here. Just silly. Like, we just worked through contract talks, just me and you sitting here for 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And we basically have Lamar Jackson getting $283 million if he just does things right. And he's basically signing 2 contracts. Like, what are, like, come on, Mom, get your stuff together. Get out of the room. You don't need to be there.
Exactly. Get it together. You hate to see it because it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think he ends up back in Baltimore, but there might be some acrimonious feelings regarding how this all played out. So we'll see. All right, switching gears here. We got a final 10 minutes here on the latest edition, episode number 502 of Doc and Jock. I'm very curious to see how far does Michigan State making the NCAA tournament, how far do they go? Because once the bracket was revealed after a disastrous Big Ten performance, you look at it and you say, oh my God, they gave themselves an opportunity to have a nice opportunity in the bracket that they're in with USC and potentially playing Marquette. For me, and we'll address the viral video that got posted over the weekend in just a few minutes, for me, it's one and done. They'll win against USC because they'll have a good shooting performance, but then they'll have a quick turnaround a couple days later, and they'll struggle. Unfortunately, based on their record, they are in a position where they're going to have to face one of the top teams, and I don't see them getting out of the first weekend. Now, they could surprise me. I wouldn't be shocked if it happens, but at the very based on what I've seen all year, it's an inconsistent team that can get cold real fast. And it's a weird team in that you've built a team that's supposed to be really solid shooting the 3, and then you go into the Big Ten and you have performances where you struggle, and you have kind of a team that really doesn't have any go-to guys. It's weird, it's a team that's driven by your guards, but their play has been inconsistent at best. It's not a team that really rebounds all that hard. Their defense, kind of when it's emphasized, then it goes away. So it's just not a real traditional Tom Izzo team. It's disappointing. And it's frustrating when you see an opportunity to win the Big Ten tournament and you go in and you get, just after a few days of kicking Ohio State's ass at home, you go in, you lay a dud, and you have a player that's looking like you can visually see the response that the kid's given in his head. He's like, his coach telling me again. And he admitted it when he was asked about the video. He said, yeah, I was kind of like, I'm struggling, and you don't want to hear a player, you don't want to hear the coach kind of get on you. And they downplayed it. But obviously that's the whole point of the thesis of the live reaction to the video, which is when you hear the same voice in your ear day after day after day after day, it just gets old and stale. And even if it's just, even if the kids are only there for a year or two or three or four, when you have the guy grinding on you, that's the look you get, where it's like a teacher just going, Mr. Straczynski, can you please stop twiddling with your pencil again? And you're looking like, yeah, this is the 50,000th time you've told me that, asshole. I'm trying to look at my Playboys here under the desk. And you're like, come on, man. I don't want to hear that. And that's the whole point, is that, obviously I have passion and love for Tom Izzo. Give me one of the best memories of all time. And saying that maybe it's time for a new voice, when you're there for 25 years, no matter how much success you have, it's just natural. It's sports. It's not out of hatred. It's not out of trolling. And I've done it before 5 years ago. There's a video of me and Jarvie asking, is Tom Izzo overrated, where you guys all freaked out. It's like, Tom Izzo's a deity because he gets to the tournament every year. Well, I'll sacrifice being in the tournament one year if I can get a coach in that can potentially take us to the big dance, to the Final Four again, and win it all. So that's just what I'm saying. My thesis was, just based on what I saw, it looks like a tired situation, and it looks like a situation in which the team is not going to have that much success. So we'll see.
I could make a case that Michigan State makes it to the Elite Eight. After that, I don't know where they go. And this would be my case for it, right? And this is where I'll go. I think if you look at what they've got going on in their pod, right, their half of their part of the bracket, I think Marquette beats Vermont. All right. Now, Shaka Smart has not done an incredible job since he's been at Marquette. If anything, his teams have been incredibly shaky. They do struggle that very first game of the tournament. So there's no guarantee that they even beat Vermont. Now, if Vermont gets through, I think Michigan State beats Vermont. I think Michigan State beats Marquette. I think they have a better shot of matching up against them, and I think they can take care of business there. Now, if they get by Marquette, you're looking at what's taking place above them, right? It's not the same vintage Kentucky team that we've had in the past. I do think Kentucky beats Providence, so Kentucky gets to move on. Kansas State versus Montana State, I think Kansas State wins. And I think when Kentucky and Kansas State meet, I think Kansas State can beat Kentucky, which then leads to Kansas State versus Michigan State. And this is where things get a little bit fun, right? I think when you look at the matchup to get on and move forward, Michigan and Kansas State, as far as just looking at stats, right, and using stats to make an argument, field goal percentage, they're incredibly close. Kansas State shoots 45.3. Michigan shoots 45%. If you look at three-point field goal percentage, Michigan State's one of the best teams in the NCAA. They shoot damn near 40%, whereas Kansas State is one of the bottom teams in all of college basketball. They shoot at 34%. That right there can swing a game. And then you add in the way that they're able to go to the line. Michigan State is a very good team from the free throw line, and that alone will help win you a game or two. So I think the three-pointers and the field goal percent and the free throw percentage can help get Michigan into that Elite Eight matchup. And after that, things can get a little bit weird and things can get a little bit dicey from there. I don't know if you get past Kansas State. I don't know if you get past Purdue. I don't know if Duke gets there. I don't know if you get past Duke. You know, Duke and Michigan State have had a bit of a rivalry, and Michigan State always seems to fall short in that rivalry. Now, yeah, it was against Coach K, and this is, again, not a vintage Duke team. But that being said, I don't know if they get by Duke, and I don't know if they get by Tennessee, if Tennessee's lucky enough to get through to the Elite Eight. But I can make a case, and I can see Michigan State getting to the Elite Eight. And I think if you're a Michigan State fan, if you're a Big Ten fan, that's a big deal. And I think that's something that you should be happy about because, look, Big Ten's not been good this year. Some of the worst basketball I think we have seen in a very long time. And Michigan State, this is not a vintage Michigan State team. This whole bracket, this whole part of the bracket, the East is a team where there's a lot of blue chippers in there, but the blue chippers aren't those vintage blue chip teams. So I think that is part of why Michigan State has a path to the Elite Eight.
Okay, tell me a little bit, just real fast, your thoughts on the tournament. Is it Kansas's to lose? It's kind of what I'm hearing across the interwebs.
I think if anything,
Alabama?
I think Houston. I think Houston. Here's the thing, Alabama. I don't know what's going to happen with Alabama. There's a lot going on with Alabama, and there's a lot going on with murder charges and players, and there's just a lot. So Alabama, I don't know if the media scrutiny, because look, when you end up going national like this and you have these national tournaments, things get ratcheted up a little bit. I don't know if they're able to stand strong through all of that and make it through to the tournament and make it into the Final Four. I think at some point they wilt along the way. I think it's just too much pressure. Also, again, that's not necessarily a blue chip school. Blue chip school, I think, can kind of handle that pressure. I don't think Alabama does. I think Houston's a team that you got to watch. I think they're a good team. I think if there's ever a year for Kansas to do it, kind of feels like this would be the year for Kansas to do it. So we'll see. I haven't even sat down and done a bracket yet. Just kind of looking over a couple. I think when just really quickly, and look, this might change because, like I said, I haven't really even sat down and done one yet. By the time this comes out, I'll have one completed. I think coming out of the South, I think you probably have Virginia coming out of the South. That's who I'll go with just really quickly. I think Houston comes out of the Midwest. I think out of the West, you'll probably have Kansas come out of the West, and then I think you probably have Tennessee come out of the East. I don't think Purdue holds strong. I don't think Purdue does a good enough job. I think they've got some freshmen that they've been leaning on. I think the freshmen get a little bit cold. Freshmen tend to hit a wall at a certain point in the year, and I think their freshmen are hitting that wall right now. So I think Tennessee will come out of the East. And then after that, we'll go Kansas, and we will go Virginia. And I like the way Virginia plays basketball. Virginia does a really nice job with three-pointer. Virginia plays that they play a funky defense that forces turnovers. So I'm going to go Virginia to win the whole damn thing.
Virginia, nice. I can't wait, guys.
Yeah.
Spartans play St. Patrick's Day. It's going to be a fun time. Man, it's good times because St. Patrick's Day noon, Michigan State kicks it off, man. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSJROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Our hour is now up. Podcasting time is now over. Thank you guys so much for supporting the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Episode 502 in the books. Looking at Lions free agency and a brief look at Michigan State and their run. Hey, kudos to Michigan. They played and actually performed well against Toledo in the NIT. So they get a golf clap from the doc. Good job, cuz. Let's get back next week and get a full evaluation of what the Lions have done in free agency on the next episode of Doc and Jock.